George Washington Carver died in Tuskegee, Alabama, January 5, 1943. A life that stood out as a gospel, self-forgetting service. He could have added fortune to fame, but caring for neither, he found happiness and honor in being helpful to the world. The center of his world was the South, where he was born in slavery some 70 years ago, and where he did his work as a creative scientist. George Washington Carver was an archaeological scientist and inventor who developed hundreds of products using peanuts, though not peanut butter as often claimed, sweet potatoes, and soybeans. Born an African-American slave a year before the practice was outlawed, Carver left home at a young age to pursue education and would eventually earn a master's degree in agricultural science from Iowa State University. He would go on to teach and conduct research at Tuskegee University for decades, and soon after his death, his childhood home would be named a national monument, the first of its kind in honor of an African American. George Washington Carver's early life. Born on a farm near Diamond, Missouri, the exact date of Carver's birth is unknown, but it's thought he was born in January or June of 1864. 9 years prior, Moses Carver, a white farm owner, purchased George Carver's mother, Mary, when she was 13 years old. The elder Carver reportedly was against slavery but needed help with his 240-acre farm. When Carver was an infant, he, his mother, and sister were kidnapped from the Carver farm by one of the bands of slave raiders that roamed Missouri during the Civil War era. They were sold in Kentucky. Moses Carver hired a neighbor to retrieve them, but the neighbor only succeeded in finding George, whom he purchased by trading one of Moses' finest horses. Carver grew up knowing little about his mother or father, who had died in an accident before he was born. Moses Carver and his wife Susan raised the young George and his brother James as their own and taught the boys how to read and write. James gave up his studies and focused on working the fields with Moses. George, however, was a frail and sickly child who could not help with such work. Instead, Susan taught him how to cook, mend, embroider, do laundry, and garden, as well as how to concoct simple herbal medicines. At a young age, Carver took a keen interest in plants and experimented with natural pesticides, fungicides, and soil conditioners. He became known as the plant doctor to local farmers due to his ability to discern how to improve the health of their gardens, fields, and orchards. Education. At age 11, Carver left the farm to attend an all-black school in the nearby town of Neosho. He was taken in by a childless African-American couple named Andrew and Mariah Watkins, who gave him a roof over his head in exchange for help with household chores. A midwife and nurse, Mariah imparted on Carver her broad knowledge of medicinal herbs and her devout faith. Disappointed with the education he received at the Neosho school, Carver moved to Kansas about 2 years later, joining numerous other African Americans who were traveling west. For the next decade or so, Carver moved from one Midwestern town to another, putting himself through school and surviving off of the domestic skills he learned from his foster mothers. He graduated from Minneapolis High School in Minneapolis, Kansas in 1880 and applied to Highland College in Kansas. He was initially accepted at the all-white college, but was later rejected when the administration learned he was black. In the late 1880s, Carver befriended the Mulhollands, a white couple in Winterset, Iowa, who encouraged him to pursue a higher education. Despite his former setback, he enrolled in Simpson College, a Methodist school that admitted all qualified applicants. Carver initially studied art and piano in hopes of earning a teaching degree, but one of his professors, Etta Budd, was skeptical of a black man being able to make a living as an artist. After learning of his interest in plants and flowers, Budd encouraged Carver to apply to the Iowa State Agricultural School, now Iowa State University, to study botany. In 1894, Carver became the first African American to earn a Bachelor of Science degree. Impressed by Carver's research on the fungal infections of soybean plants, his professors asked him to stay on for graduate studies. Carver worked with famed mycologist, fungi scientist I.H. Pamel at the Iowa State Experimental Station, honoring his skills in identifying and treating plant diseases. In 1896, Carver earned the Master of Agriculture degree and immediately received several offers, the most attractive of which came from Booker T. Washington, whose last name George would later add to his own, of Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University in Alabama. Washington convinced the university's trustees to establish an agricultural school which could only be run by Carver if Tuskegee was to keep its all-black faculty. Carver accepted the offer and would work at Tuskegee Institute for the rest of his life. Carver at Tuskegee Institute. Carver's early years at Tuskegee were not without hiccups. For one, agricultural training was not popular. Southern farmers believed they already knew how to farm, and students saw schooling as a means to escape farming. Additionally, many faculty members resented Carver for his high salary and demanded to have 2 dormitory rooms, one for him and one for his plant specimens. Carver also struggled with the demands of the faculty position he held. He wanted to devote his time to researching agriculture for ways to help out poor Southern farmers, but he was also expected to manage the school 2 farms, teach, ensure the school's toilets and sanitary facilities work properly, and sit on multiple committees and councils. Carver and Washington had a complicated relationship and would butt heads often, in part because Carver wanted little to do with teaching, though he was beloved by his students. Carver would eventually get his way when Washington died in 1915 and was succeeded by Robert Russia Motton, who relieved Carver of his teaching duties except for summer school. Carver's fruitful research. By this time, Carver already had great successes in the laboratory and the community. He taught poor farmers that they could feed hogs acorns instead of commercial feed and enrich croplands with swamp muck instead of fertilizers. His ideas of crop rotation proved to be the most valuable. Through his work on soil chemistry, Carver learned that the years of growing cotton had depleted the nutrients from the soil, resulting in low yields. But by growing nitrogen-filled plants like peanuts, soybeans, and sweet potatoes, the soil could be restored, allowing yield to increase dramatically when the land is reverted to cotton use a few years later. To further help farmers, he invented the Jessup wagon, a kind of mobile horse-drawn classroom and laboratory used to demonstrate soil chemistry. The Peanut Man. Farmers, of course, loved the high yields of cotton they were now getting from Carver's crop rotation techniques, but the method had an unintended consequence: a surplus of peanuts and other non-cotton products. Carver set to work on finding alternative uses for these products. For example, he invented numerous products from sweet potatoes, including edible products like flour and vinegar, and non-food items such as stains, dyes, paints, and writing ink. But Carver's biggest success came from peanuts. In all, he developed more than 300 food, industrial, and commercial products from peanuts, including milk, Worcestershire sauce, punches, cooking oils, and salad oil, paper, cosmetics, snaps, and wood stains. He also experimented with peanut-based medicines such as antihistamines, laxatives, and goiter medications. It should be noted, however, that many of these suggestions or discoveries remain curiosities and did not find widespread applications. In 1921, Carver appeared before the Ways and Means Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives on behalf of the peanut industry, which was seeking tariff protection. Through his testimony did not begin well. He described the wide range of products that could be made from peanuts, which not only earned him a standing ovation, but also convinced the committee to approve a high protective tariff for the common regime. He then became known as the Peanut Man. Carver's fame and legacy. In the last 2 decades of his life, Carver lived as a minor celebrity, but his focus was always on helping people. He traveled the South to promote racial harmony, and he traveled to India to discuss nutrition in developing nations with Mahatma Gandhi. Up until the year of his death, he also released bulletins for the public, 44 bulletins between 1898 and 1943. Some of the bulletins reported on research findings, but many others were more practical in nature and included cultivation information for farmers, scientists, for teachers, and recipes for housewives. In the middle 1930s, when the polio virus raged in America, Carver became convinced that the peanuts were the answer. He offered a treatment of peanut oil massages and reported positive results. Though no scientific evidence exists that the treatment worked, the benefits patients experienced were likely due to the massage treatment and attentive care rather than the oil. Carver died on January 5th, 1943 at Tuskegee University. Soon after, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed legislation for Carter to receive his own monument, an honor previously only granted to presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. The George Washington Carver National Monument now stands in Diamond, Missouri. Carver was also posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. It's always great being able to come and honor true greatness. Albert Einstein once said that George Washington Carver was the only one in the 20th century that was smarter than he was. So the man we all know is synonymous with being smart said that George Washington Carver was smarter than he was. It was an honor to visit George Washington Carver's gravesite and to read the short biography of his life. A truly great man who rose from slavery to be considered the smartest man in the 20th century and gave us all an example to live by. Rest in peace, and thank you for all you've given us.